entertainment, current events, and Hollywood. Don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha Bean, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
Pete Chatmon, director of TV and film. My most recent and current episode is Yellowjackets, episode 306.
Awesome. I love going back to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life. Our little habits that we pick up along the way follow us into our adulthood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was that like? And, when did you kind of get the bug and, what made you say, yes, I want to be, a creator?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, hindsight is 2020, right? And so when I look back at my childhood, I see that I was kind of always attracted to things that offered me an opportunity to control a world. So I wrote short stories, when I mean, most players like that. Legos is that. Let me build my own world.
Yeah.
In high school, I wanted to be an architect, and that's really specifically trying to design a world. But I took a course and it was a little too mathy for me. And we,
I know
and
that. I
we,
know what you mean.
and we built like a little house to scale, and I was like, man, that's a lot. So fortunately, we had a film elective in my high school in New Jersey, in Maplewood, New Jersey, Columbia High School. And they had a Super 8 camera. I picked it up. That was 1993. I'm going to date myself.
Oh.
And I knew immediately that that was it. And my film teacher in high school, George Chase, had gone to NYU. So all of his anecdotes began literally with when I was at NYU. So I looked it up, and at that time I was really becoming impacted and inspired by Spike Lee, and I saw that he had gone there, Oliver Stone, Martin Scorsese, and I was like, well, feels like that's what it's going to be. So that's what I did.
I love that, and it's so interesting. Like you figured it out. I feel like a lot of people, they go to school and then they get these tools, but they're really not sure. Okay, what's the next step? Okay, I got to create something. I got to do something, and then finding that their,
Right.
I guess their signature. Like every director seems like they have their like, watch when you watch it, like you said, a Scorsese, it's a Scorsese film when you
Right.
watch it. Like he
Right.
has his signature.
Right.
um I'm curious, like how in developing that and finding that, when did that come along, and how soon did you started to like, or did you always kind of know?
Yeah, like in terms of like a signature or just
Yeah.
like yeah, I mean, I think the journey for me specifically, and maybe it's a creative journey that we all share. I think you're so inspired in the beginning by whomever it may be that you develop a bit of a North Star. Then I
Mm.
think you spend a lot of time trying to replicate that North Star, trying to do what that person or those people have done. Um, and the thing that you realize is that it ain't you. You know what I mean? So you realize you can't really do that. And then en route to that, you find your own voice, and then you spend, all of your time, rinse, repeat, trying to refine once you found that voice. And so for me, it really went from like trying to do too much, trying to like have a whole like look at me kind of thing about directing
Yeah.
to pivoting to finding how to find myself in a story, elevate what's on the page, and still like bring a unique perspective to it, but putting the story first before the filmmaker.
I,
And that's a tough thing because I think in the beginning you definitely want to be like, look at this shot and look at this and that. And I still do that. I'm not gonna lie. Like, but I always tether it to what fits what we're doing right now as a story.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you have like your resume is impeccable. It's pretty impressive resume of work, a body of work that you've done.
Thank you.
Tell me when, like, I mean, you've done like the things like You, Chicago Fire, I mean, Yellowjackets, the list goes on. Tell me when you first got like one of your first, you know, memorable moments on set as a director, and like what was that experience like? What did you feel? Or were you just like, hey, I know that I knew it was gonna always be here at this moment. It's just a timing thing.
Man, I mean, I definitely knew I would always be there. I mean, I think you can't pursue a creative career if you don't, because most of your creative career, you ain't there. Right? So you gotta have some like vision that you're seeing, that you're holding on to, and trying to turn into a reality. So by the time it I got that first episode, in 2017, just specifically, after graduating college in 1999, I made a feature in '05. I made another feature in '07. I won a script competition in '08. I mean, I was accomplishing these things, but they weren't like pushing me down the career road as far as like, I was building credits and experience, but I wasn't being hired, right?
Right.
All
Right.
these were self-generated projects, but
Yeah.
I knew that the things that I was learning were going to be things that would make me soar when I got the opportunity. So when I got there, yeah, I was like, this is great. I feel I deserve to be here, and so almost like a little anticlimactic because you're not like, yeah, like you finished running a marathon and you're like, yeah, I trained for this. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like this is what we expected to do.
Yeah.
Um, but that said, you immediately find out the gap between your abilities and your experience. And
Mm,
so I was always aware of that and really trying to, take in that information every day of like, okay, like I did have some experience and it paid off in this way, but I got a lot to learn on how to talk to an actor.
right. Right.
I got a lot to learn on how to, you know, uh, make this more collaborative and not just try and railroad folks into doing what I've thought about for, 2 weeks, when I design my shot list.
Yeah.
So it's a dance between those things. But I will say maybe more specifically, I remember giving a note to an actor and the actor kind of having an elevated response
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
note. And walking away from that, I realized like, oh, there's so many politics involved here. And in that particular case, I was like, they asked me to give a note that they don't want to give. And so now I was too young to know and read the room. So I just walked in with this thing that had no other outcome than pissing this actor off. And so, again, I hop up here and I say, how do I avoid that? And you
Yeah.
start developing strategies.
It's amazing. Wow. Yeah, it's definitely learning, right? It's a process for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Yellowjackets, which,
Yeah.
great show, and congratulations on that. I'm just curious
Thank you.
because everyone who watches the show, and I've seen a few episodes, and what I feel like it's very intense. It's a thriller, psychological depth. Um, but what was I'm curious of like the biggest challenge in balancing thriller elements with emotional weight of the story. Like, how
Yeah.
did you do that?
It was really, I think that show for a director is really about having a complete toolkit, because there's so many things at play. There's what you've mentioned. There's also the fact that you're kind of directing two different shows
Right.
because you've got the 1997, if I'm correct, stuff, and then the 2021 stuff. And so you're dealing with actors of varying experience. You're dealing with nothing, at least in season 3, nothing but the elements in the wilderness, like we outside. You know what I mean? And then like 2 days later, you're on a stage. You know what I mean? So like it's just a and the way that you work with each actor is so different, not only just in age and then in timelines, but just in experience. Not in experience, but within the experience, category. And so yeah, there was that, and just really kind of knowing when to lean on what part of your craft, like a lot of the misty stuff,
Yeah.
present day um, has some levity to it. So you
Yeah.
have to, deal with that. Then there's the developing like, Ty and Van present day story, which is a much different kind of, weight to deal with in terms of like what can go on with the human mind and trauma and all that stuff. And then you've got, the 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 Natalie and Ben storyline, which is just full of drama and pay and wait and payoff. So it's just trying to like honor each moment
Yeah.
and find the best like tool in your toolkit to deliver what the writers wrote to the audience in the most impactful way.
I love that. That's beautiful. I have a fun question.
Yeah.
There's no wrong answer. The three levels of influence:
Okay.
money, power, and respect.
All
And if
right.
you could choose only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
Wow. That's a great question. And a great song from the Locks.
Yeah.
Let's see. Money, power, or respect, which, honestly, I think it will be respect because the money comes and goes, the power ebbs and flows, and the respect remains if you do things that earn it. So I think you always will, like in the lean times of when the money's gone away. Like I have a friend who said, there's 4 stages of a career in Hollywood. And he said, it's who's Pete Chatmon? It's get me Pete Chatmon. It's get me a younger Pete Chatmon. And
Mm,
then it's who's Pete Chatmon.
mm.
And I think there's some truth to that. And, right now I might be in the get me Pete Chatmon stage, and I hope that's the case. But um, as time moves on, as it always does, I think that if people respect me when we get to the, you know, get me a younger Pete Chatmon or who's Pete Chatmon, there will be people who will be like, nah, that he's that dude. He's solid. Like, let's bring him on to this show, or let's buy this project. The tides may be turning in terms of money and power, but he's got that respect. And I think you can look at that in so many different industries and across so many different leaders. So that would be it for me.
That's a great answer. Um, do you feel like the industry is changing? I mean, with everything that's been going on, down to the protesting and all the things, and
Yeah.
um, where we are now, with the industry wise and the market. Do
Yeah.
you feel like it's changing for the better? And just from your point of view
No.
as a director, you're
Yeah.
out there in the field, you're working, you're in there. Do you feel like things are actually changing?
So I don't think they're changing for the better,
Uh,
but I do think that two things can be true at the same time. So with any change, you're in the middle of something like that you can visibly identify changing. But I think for every action, there's a reaction. At the same time, there are things that are bubbling over that are moving in a direction to combat that change that don't yet have a definition,
gotcha.
right? Like they don't yet, like before it was like labeled Generation X. It was still Generation X. It
Yeah.
just didn't have a label, right? Or before, film, new film genres like mumblecore arrive, it was still mumblecore. They just didn't have a name for it. So I think that, and I hope that there's and I try and be part of that response in continuing to create, continuing to address, honestly what's going on in the world, and continuing to like use your voice to stand up for the things that you care about and the people who don't have um, a microphone or a typewriter or a camera pointed at them, right? But there's so many things that are happening now. I mean, you've got, you know, just as an example, I think the documentary that won an Oscar, I think was, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but I think it was co-directed by an Israeli and a Palestinian, and it can't get distribution. No one wants to touch it. You know what I mean? And you would say a year ago, 2 years ago, you get the Oscar, now you've done the thing that, opens that door, and that door remains closed.
Isn't that
And
weird?
yeah, well, no, because you've got people who are making a concerted effort to eliminate diversity and
Wow.
opposing voices. And there's so many things that are being done as a statement to do that, from taking a jackhammer to Black Lives Matter way, like that couldn't be I mean, just even if that's your thing, that couldn't just be repainted. You know what I mean? Like you had to
Yeah.
take a jackhammer to destroy it. So these are the things that are designed to send a message, to get a response. And I think the artist's challenge is finding how to navigate the realities of business while still having a voice.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. That's what it's about. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was telling someone, I was like, as much as, you see like the greats that went on and passed on, like your Michael Jackson or,
Yeah,
Prince, people that were actually talking about the industry as a whole of like, oh, this is great, but there are things that are there's politics that
right,
these has to like go in order to, there's like, yeah, you only go so far because that's like, seems like there's a cap. They don't want people to like reach or
right,
become bigger than them in a way.
right,
So then it's like, well, then what's needed for Hollywood if you outdo Hollywood?
right,
So, I get that it's that finding that middle ground, being able to be creative and still do what you love to do, but not let it destroy you. Like as they say, play the game.
yeah.
Oh, so it's very
It's
interesting. Very
it is
interesting.
a business.
It's a business. It's a very interesting business. You did. Speaking of you, because I love that show.
Mhm.
Absolutely love the show. And I
That's a
think they
great
have like
show.
one more season left. They're going to be doing.
April 24th, all 10 episodes will drop for season 5, the final season.
Amazing. Awesome. You directed an episode. What season was it again
I
exactly?
did I did 2 episodes in season 3. So one was the big library event. And then the other was the kind of swingers evening gone wrong, with Joe and Love and Sherry and Carrie.
That's amazing. That was a great episode. I was curious about just like, getting that call to do this show that at that point, I mean, has like a massive success.
Yeah.
Did you feel like, oh my God, I have to, get, it's like you get into that position of like, okay, now carrying on, not take going completely far away from obviously the the style that they have already and the
Right.
pacing, but were there any particular scenes or moments of the episode or that you found that were kind of especially challenging, um and even rewarding to direct and when you did
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it's funny because I sometimes I feel like with some of these questions, I'm like the worst interview subject because because I'm like, well, I embrace the challenge. What I mean? Like because the nature of I think the only way to survive, this industry is to keep a level head. And to do that, you've got to really develop like a workflow and a process to be able to take anything that's incoming and turn it into something that is well executed. Because sometimes, I'll do a show and I won't get a script until I'm halfway through prep. And so, it's super challenging and it's not supposed to happen, but no one watching the episode knows that I had less time to prepare.
Wow.
So, so like you still have to be able to like process and turn that into art. Um, I think that there were a lot of things in that episode that I had never done before. So there were obviously like, I've done a whole lot of intimate scenes, but that was on a different level with so many people.
Mhm.
Um, Probably one of the for that time in my career, like larger stunt scenes that I had done with Joe and Carrie fighting down in the living room into the kitchen out to the backyard with the arrow and the rock to the head, so it was a lot. But I always feel like it's an opportunity to show what I'm able to do. So that I guess that's why I embrace it a lot. And I take a high level of confident competitiveness to every show where, just for myself, I'm often just like, you know what, I'm trying to make the best episode of the season, and who knows if I realize that, but that's kind of the approach that keeps me going. So like no matter if that script is late or early or what's in it, like that kind of is my kind of personal push to keep it all in context.
I love that. I love that. You also have a podcast show, amazing
Mhm.
show, where you're talking to a lot of creatives as well. Like I feel like just the conversations. It's so I love those conversations where it's so in depth. People that have done it and give such knowledge and understanding of like
Yeah,
how to do it and how they got started.
right.
You have how did that start, by the way? And also you have a live Let's Shoot, right, with
Yeah.
on your show Wednesday, I think March the 19th. Can you
Yes,
tell us
we
a little bit
do.
about that?
Yeah. So, the podcast, I've had all these en route to, getting into TV, and in the lean years when I was just kind of making things and they were falling in the forest and no one heard the trees, right? Like, I had a podcast with a buddy of mine in 2009 to 2011, and we did 83 episodes of it. And our
Mm,
final guest on that podcast was Issa Rae right after she had fundraised like double the amount of her Kickstarter for Awkward Black Girl. And so, I continued to see her like with some of the branded content work that I would do, but I feel pretty confident that that was a relationship builder, which led to me doing the second episode of season 3 of Insecure.
mhm.
So I never forgot that. You know what I mean? And so when the pandemic hit, which is a wild phrasing, when the global pandemic happened and everybody
Literally.
stopped, I was at home and I was like, you know what, this is a good time to bring that back. And that was June of 20 that was June of 2020. And so I just continued, under the same idea without a co-host. So it's a little more heavy lifting, as I'm sure you know. But yeah, I talked to folks in front of the camera, behind the camera about their journeys, about storytelling, about what makes a good director. And I view it through the lens of like, what do I wish I would have had available to me as a resource when I was in the years where I could have stopped doing this, or I could have been, bitter, or I could have, you know, uh, taken some like psychological refinement to my process. Because a lot of what we've been talking about here too is like, we're not really talking about like technical stuff. A lot of my answers are like how I control my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I can do the job, the technical job. And so, yeah, so we've done. We're about to reach episode 80. We're in the end of our sixth season, and on Wednesday we're doing our first live event. We're gonna show my episode of Yellowjackets, and then we're gonna have a talk back with the two co-creators, Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, the an executive producer and director, Jeffrey W. Bird, and then two of the stars, Courtney Eaton, who plays Teen Lottie, and I'm sorry, Warren Cole, who plays Jeff Sadecki. So it should be fun. It's our first live one. Tickets are moving. I'm excited to kind of like put something into the real world and step away from my mic in my office and see what it feels like to be out in the streets again.
Love that. I love
Yeah,
that. That's awesome. Congratulations on that. That's really it's really exciting. Um,
thank you.
for those that are listening, the aspiring directors out there,
Yeah,
that want to get and break into this wild industry
yeah.
of television and film. What advice would you give them?
I would say find, and I'll preface, there is no rush. Don't feel pressure to do this, but consider it the long-term goal. Find clarity in what it is that you want to do. The more specific you are, the more of an opportunity you have to get there. I always use the example of like, in the old time yellow pages, for those who are old enough to remember that, you know, if you could have an ad that said, accounting, lawyer, we buy gold and plumbing, or you could say 24-hour emergency plumbing. If I need plumbing, I'm calling that one. I'm not calling the other one. So, when I was looking to get into TV, I only spoke to people about being a half-hour single camera comedy director because I couldn't go around and say, yeah, I've done a documentary and I want to do drama or comedy. It was like for 3 years, that was the only thing that I expressed to people. And then once I got a little bit of a pinky toe in that door, then I started going for the 1 hour dramas.
Mm,
And so I would say be clear on that. Then I'd say master your craft. You've got to know how to do what you do. You've got to know what you don't know how to do. And you can be more honest about that than you think, because a lot of times if you try and mask what you don't know, people who know what you don't know are going to think you look ridiculous. So
mm,
it's just better to embrace what you don't know, and people will collaborate and swarm around you to elevate you.
mhm.
And then the last thing I'd say is don't be an asshole, because it comes back to you. And I can't tell you. I mean, I've had times in the last couple months where I've been like, I should check this motherfucker. You know what I mean? And then I didn't, and something popped up 6 weeks later where that person was connected or involved, and they like closed the gap for me. They gave a good review, and I'm like, see, that's why you got to manage yourself. So I would keep those things in mind, because it's a mixture of all of that kind of puts you in a position to be creative. It's
Yeah,
not a creative first job.
right.
You get to set, the cameras roll maybe 40 minutes a day. The other 12 to 13 hours is navigating relationships. So embrace that.
I love
And
that.
and sorry, last thing I'd say, because I always feel like I could go forever, but I would say also, whether you like it or not, embrace the fact that all industries are, with the exception of sports where and other things where it's purely a meritocracy. You put up 30 points and 20 rebounds a game, they're gonna find you. You know what I mean? Like, but just embrace the reality that it's an awareness campaign. And the more people who know about you, the more likelihood you have an opportunity to get to where you're going. So, you know,
Very
take
true.
that and do with that what you will. But I'll tell you, that's why I wrote a book. That's why I have a podcast. It's part of the reason, and it's why I embrace having as many meetings as possible, because you never know.
You never know. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, my last question, and I really like asking this, and I'm just very curious of your answer for this one. If you could have a coffee date with
Hmm.
any director, living or dead, who would it be and why? And what would you ask them on the coffee date?
Yeah, that's good. This answer could change. This answer could change. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say Oscar Michaud.
Wow.
because for
Wow,
those who
yeah.
don't know, he's kind of considered the first Black filmmaker. We're going back to, I don't want to misspeak, but at least the 30s, 30s, 40s. And what he had to endure to create, to distribute, to stay motivated to fight that fight. I'd be very interested in hearing specifically what those motivations were
Yeah.
and how he navigated it. And my hunch is that it would probably be many of the same principles that motivate me, but I would be very curious to hear it.
I love that. I love that answer. That's a
Mm.
great one. I don't think we had that. No one's ever said that on the show, and I've had
Huh.
many guests, and that's a fantastic. I'd love to know how he did it too.
Yeah, yeah,
Because like
yeah.
I think about it now, and just how much, politics it is when it comes to, I mean, even me being a female in this industry, and I can only
Right.
imagine what it's like for, you know, um, people that are, of color doing this business. But yeah, things are a lot better, absolutely, but it's still very much interesting, a fight.
Yeah.
But he made it. He made it happen, which is
Yeah.
like how?
How exactly? We sit down at that Starbucks and I'd be like, how? You know,
Yeah,
go.
it's pretty wild. Is there anything that's coming up that you'd like to share with us on the show? Any new announcements, anything else that you have coming up?
I mean, I just booked a new Amazon show that will be a prequel to a pretty big movie, kind of big character that they're gonna explore high school with this character. I don't know if I'm at liberty to say, but I'm excited about it because it'll be a little bit of a different genre for me, working with folks I haven't worked with before at Amazon and at Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And I've got a feature film that we are putting the script out to actors right now. It's a heist film, and I'm super hopeful that we can connect the dots, and I can get back into that feature director chair because I dearly miss it.
I'm sure you got it. Your mouth
Yeah.
to God's ears. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
My
And
pleasure. Thank you.
absolutely, really quick, where can people find you on social media to follow everything you have going on?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's at Pete Chatmon, so PeteChatmon, and that's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. I ain't really over there like that anymore, but you can, I'll see it. And yeah, that's where everything is. So I appreciate it, and I really do appreciate the time and your questions and the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.